Good everyone. I hope you guys have an amazing day. Welcome back to the self-hosted transhumanism podcast. I'm Mr. Cohen, and this podcast is dedicated to exploring how emerging technologies are quietly transforming human life in a ways far deeper than new apps or faster computers. We often talk about AI, that is artificial intelligence, as a tool that can improve productivity. But what we rarely confront is the long term consequences of machines becoming better than humans at most forms of work. Today's episode looks directly at that future and asks a simple but uncomfortable question: what happens to humanity when work is no longer needed? For most of human history, work was not a choice or a personal ambition. It was the basic mode of survival. People hunted, farmed, built shelter, and created tools because without those efforts, their communities would collapse. As societies developed, work evolved into trades and professions, and eventually into the modern wage system, where time and skill are exchanged for money. Over generations, the system shaped everything around it. Education system exists primarily to prepare people for employment, which is really not great. Healthcare is often tied to having a job. Again, it's not really great. Social status, self-worth, and even daily schedule revolve around working life, which to me again is not a great system. In many culture or many civilization, what you do for a living becomes your primary identity. Now, if you ask me as a transhumanist, is that a great system what we have? Not really, but we really don't have any other alternative option to supersede those systems, at least for now. Now, we are entering a period where machines are becoming to outperform humans, not just in a physical labor, but also in cognitive work. Artificial intelligence can analyze data faster than any human. It can write software, it can diagnose diseases, it can also do your financial marketing stuff. It can create content, and it can also operate machines with precision and consistency. Robotics, for instance, is advancing to the point where manufacturing, logistics, agriculture, construction, and even caregiving can be increasingly automated. This is not a distant future. It is already being implemented in companies across the world. The important shift is not the same jobs will disappear, or in other words, the jobs like um, programming or a medicine or take any manual jobs, right? Or frontline staff jobs. It's not the question about these jobs, right? I mean, if you look at all of the industrial revolution which we've been through, it pretty much has happened in every technological revolution, right? The the deeper shift is the intelligence itself is becoming automated. That's what the challenging part of this industrial revolution, or I would say the fifth one. When machines can both think and act more efficiently than humans, there is no economic reason to keep large portions of the human workforce employed. Think about it, what I just said. Businesses are driven by efficiency, reliability, and cost. Once machines outperform people, replacing human labor becomes a rational decision rather than a moral one. Just think about what I just said. As this accelerates, entire categories of work will slowly vanish. Not just factory jobs, but accounting, like I said, legal research, customer service, medicine, transportation, programming, design, journalism, even parts of education. New jobs will emerge for a time, but the overall trend points towards fewer roles requiring human involvement. Eventually, the amount of necessary human labor may become extremely small compared to the size of the population. Now, this creates a reality that humans have never faced before, a society where survival is no longer tied to working. At first, this sounds like Ethiopia, utopia. Machines produce food, build infrastructure, manage logistics, and provide services at minimal cost. Now, goods become abundant and cheaper. Many basic needs can be met with little human effort. In theory, people would be freed from exhausting labor and could focus on learning, creativity, relationships, and personal development. But in practice, the transition will be deeply disruptive because our economic and psychological system are built on work. Income is how people access resources. If millions or billions of people no longer have jobs, traditional wage system collapse. Governments will be forced to rethink how money flows through society. Concepts like universal basic income or universal services will likely become necessities rather than political ideas. Without some form of guaranteed access to food, housing, healthcare, and education, mass unemployment would quickly lead to instability. But you see, the challenge is not only economic, it also deeply human. Work gives people structure, it gives routine, it gives a sense of contribution, it gives social interaction, it gives purpose. When that disappears, many people will struggle with identity and meaning. We already see this in retirees who feel lost after leaving the workforce, or in individuals who experience long term unemployment and fall into depression, anxiety, and social isolation. When work is no longer required for survival, humanity will have to redefine what gives life value. Some people will, some people will thrive. They will use the freedom to learn, create, explore, build projects, study science, make art, start communities, and push human knowledge forward. Others will struggle without external structure or expectation. Societies will need new systems of education, focused not on job training, but on lifelong learning, creativity, emotional resilience, and personal growth. There is also the question of inequality during the transition. Those who own advanced technologies, data, infrastructure, and AI systems may initially control enormous wealth. If governments do not adapt quickly, the gap between those who control production and those who rely on social systems could become extreme. Managing this shift peacefully will be one of the greatest political challenges in human history. At the same time, this transformation opens possibilities that were impossible before. If machines handle survival needs, humans are no longer forced to choose careers purely for money. People can pursue what they're genuinely curious about: science, philosophy, art, exploration, caregiving, and innovation could flourish in ways never seen before. Education could become personalized and continuous rather than rushed towards employability. Human relationships may change as well. With more time, families could spend more time together. Communities could become stronger. People could engage more in local projects. They can volunteer and they can share the creativity. But this future will not happen automatically. Without thoughtful planning, societies could fall into widespread boredom, addiction, social fragmentation, and loss of purpose. The key point is that the disappearance of work is not simply an economic shift, it is a civilization shift. Humanity has organized itself around labor for thousands of years. Removing that foundation will require rebuilding education system, economic structure, cultural values, and definition of success. In earlier technological revolution, machines replaced muscle. But the one which we are heading towards, that's the fifth industrial revolution, it will replace intelligence itself. That makes it fundamentally different. Once a cognitive labor is automated, then there is no new class of work that humans can move into. That's why many experts argue that future of humanity will be less about productivity and more about meaning, growth, and human experience. The challenge of coming century will not how to produce enough goods. Machines will handle that. Challenge will be how to create societies where people remain fulfilled, stable, curious, and connected when survival no longer depends on employment. In, in many ways, humanity is approaching a turning point similar to the agricultural and industrial revolutions combined. The difference is that this time the transformation affects not just how we work, but why we exist within economic systems at all. The world where we work is no longer needed, could become humanity's greatest liberation or its greatest crisis, depending on how thoughtfully the transition is managed. What is certain is that this shift is already underway. The pace of artificial intelligence and automation is increasing every year. The question is no longer whether large scale job displacement will happen. The question is how prepared societies will be when it does. This is not a future our grandchildren will face. It's one of is one that many of us will live through. So in the coming episode, what I'll do, I will explore how a government might restructure economies, how education must evolve, how psychological well-being will be affected, and what new forms of purpose could replace traditional careers. So I'll be exploring the UBI, how it could work, the universal basic income. Because the matter of fact is, when work disappears, humanity will not end, but it has to reinvent itself. That being said, that's pretty much I wanted to talk about in this episode. If you like this podcast, I understand it's a self hosted podcast where I do most of the talking. Please uh, pass this on to somebody who's interested to listen to this podcast. And if you're interested to hear more future discussions around transhumanism or the future of human race, please let me know. You could support me by subscribing to this channel. As I said, I'm the founder of World Transhumanism Forum, and my main goal is to make sure we take humanity forward to the next stage of human evolution. And this is an education channel, this is an education podcast to make people aware of what's happening and what's going to happen. So please do subscribe if you wanted to support my work. That being said, hope you guys have an amazing uh, Sunday, Saturday, whichever part of the planet you're from. Thank you.